So after Elon bought Twitter, everybody was like, oh, we're gonna move to another app. This sucks. And everybody moved back within like a month. And during that chaos, two alternatives competed to be the best. There was the established but small platform named Mastodon versus a startup that was funded by the former Twitter CEO named Blue Sky. And so, what do you think I chose? I chose to go with the established but small one, Mastodon. But nowadays, I'm mostly on Blue Sky and other more well-known platforms. Mastodon and its entire network of services that are related to it, aka the Fediverse, are all pretty much just stuck right now. And with this video, I want to talk about why I left Mastodon. Not as a hater, but as someone who genuinely wanted it to succeed. So let's talk about why I joined first. I feel that I have the same sentiment as many early adopters when it comes to any sort of tech, and it's just that I wanted to try something different. I wasn't trying to escape big tech or anything like that. I was really getting into the idea of free and open source software and the idea of supporting platforms that are more focused on the user, but it wasn't my primary motivation. And so I chose to join the most popular platform on the Fediverse, Mastodon, and I just dropped my script. Okay. It's structured pretty similar to Twitter, and I really like that a lot, but there are plenty of other Fediverse platforms that emulate other social medias, so like Reddit, Facebook, etc. With Mastodon and other Fediverse platforms, and man, I really wish there was a cooler name for this besides the Fediverse, but I don't make the rules. There are multiple servers that are hosted by multiple people and independent organizations, and I'm just going to read directly off the script. Independent people and organizations called instances, and the largest of which is called Mastodon Social. However, I chose to join a smaller server instead. It was a Mastodon instance that was hosted in Germany. And it was positioned as like a chill server that was like about like tech, like games, anime, and art and stuff like that, It catered to mostly English and German speakers, so I actually learned like a little bit of German, but I've mostly forgotten that now. It was a good experience overall. I can't say anything bad about it. The admin was great, the discussions were really deep and thoughtful, and I enjoyed it. It felt like a calmer version of Twitter, and one that wasn't so much defined by like clever comebacks and like ratios and memes and stuff like that, like the typical like Twitter stuff. I'd liken it to a small suburb, right? It was friendly and it was neighborly and people actually talked to each other. But because of the decentralized nature of this platform, I could easily venture off to the big city, talk to all the other servers, all the ones that are interconnected. That makes it feel like Twitter. If you want to know more about the technical foundation for how we get this same feeling as an established social media platform, but then you can also have like your own like little small communities that are centered around your own interests, I highly suggest you look up ActivityPub. It's the technical protocol that the entirety of the Fediverse and Mastodon and all that stuff are based upon. A lot of this like culture shift probably comes from the fact that Mastodon has no built-in algorithm whatsoever. And this is a double-edged sword because it prevents a lot of like the polarization and the amplification of flame wars and misinformation and whatnot that we normally get out of other social media platforms, but it comes at the cost of discoverability, of actually meeting people. And, that is a big thing, and we'll talk about it more when I get to the flaw section of this video. I hope to engage with a lot of people who had the same interests as me, find some people that were my speed and, develop some maybe online friends or something like that. I don't know. And for a while, it was nice. I thought maybe this is the social network that I could settle upon. As I continue to use it though, I just found a lot of flaws. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I might seem distracted in this video. That's because I'm simultaneously talking to this camera and also trying to look at the script and then also watching my roommate play freaking NCAA college football, bro. EA college football, bro. So cooks. The first of those flaws is that it felt behind the other social media platforms that it was competing with. Look, on a surface level, I've got to be honest, Mastodon is just lacking in a lot of ways, all right? The web UI lacks a lot of polish, and it's missing a lot of the quality of life features that you see in other platforms. For example, all right, Twitter and all the other Twitter clones like Blue Sky and whatnot all have quoting posts, and so that's essentially when you retweet something and then you have your own text on top of it. You can kind of add your own thoughts and have it in your feed and whatnot. Mastodon didn't add those until recently. How? I have no idea. It's been a staple feature of Twitter for years, and Blue Sky has had it since it released. It seems that Mastodon holds back the entire network in a lot of ways, but the biggest of which is that it's the most popular just because it's the most popular. It's got to add a lot more features and have more of an appeal beyond just being the open source Twitter if it wants to attract a wider range of people. As a like tech enthusiast, okay, like I might care about that, but like your average person who just wants to like scroll and find like art and stuff is not going to care about that. This isn't just limited to Mastodon, however, because I find that a lot of platforms have this issue of lacking useful features and overemphasizing the platform's ideals. I just think they could get a lot further by focusing on like actually adding features rather than like making the whole like ideal, the purpose of the platform, the main selling point itself. You have to attract a user base. That's how you actually like, I guess, like progress that. But that's just my thoughts on the matter. I mean, you know, I love open technology and supporting platforms that do this thing in the first place. It's just, there's a few differences in how we can execute that. My second problem is fragmentation. All right, and this one is a bit specific. Okay, so like the beauty of the Fediverse and whatnot is that its open source nature allows for anybody to make a platform or app for it. And so naturally, many microblogging or Twitter-esque platforms have managed to arise from that. That's a great thing. That's the way it should be. But it also means that there's a lot of fragmentation in the user bases of these platforms. Some of them just aren't really like going to be stacking up to the larger platforms. And the ones that are good often never actually manage to get that critical mass of users to ever become competitive in the first place. For example, there is this platform called Firefish, and it was like a fork of another platform named Miski. Unlike Miski, Firefish actually appealed more to a Western audience, and I genuinely believe that it was better at Mastodon at its own microblogging game. It had a fresh UI, it had more features and polish, and it was growing in popularity. Keep in mind that because of federation between servers, you could still talk to other users of other platforms, like Mastodon. So you got all of the features of this new platform, and you were still able to communicate with the larger user base on other platforms. So it was just like a complete win in every way. It did not go anywhere, and it pretty much just died. It never got to fully take off, even though it was gaining users. And this happens to a lot of platforms on this network. There are other Fediverse platforms that are still in development, but they never get enough steam to actually be widely adopted. And the ones that do never reach the critical mass required to succeed, or they never get a large enough development team to be sustained long term. It's pretty rough. I have my own stories with that last point in particular, but I feel like that's a story for another day. And for my last point, discoverability and the actual act of meeting people is much harder on Mastodon and on the Fediverse than it is on its other competing platforms. So there's some baggage with this one because the Fediverse is trying to be a healthier version of social media. And together, the community and the developers of this broad social network together have rejected the notion that social media apps must have algorithms, like we see everywhere else. It's a return to the pre-algorithmic days of social media, where there is more of an emphasis on the user finding their own community rather than the platform doing it for them. That sounds good. But here's the disconnect, right? The rest of the network, especially popular apps like Mastodon and Lemmy, are still structured just like their centralized and established peers. And so we have this same structure, but without one of its core tenets, right? Which means that it's a lot more difficult to meet other people and find your own interest on these platforms, to find other people who like what you like. And it doesn't help that, due to the nature of the platform, much of the discussion centers around relatively niche topics that interest the online tech community. The reason that there's so many people on the Fediverse like this is because these people are your niche tech adopters, your early adopters, okay? That's just what happens. Even if like, think about like Facebook or something like that. Like, oh, actually, no, that's a bad example. Look, okay, I'm one of them, all right? I love Linux as much as like the next nerd, but if half of the front page is just gonna be all about Linux, how is somebody who's like into fashion or something else going to find their place? It doesn't make sense, okay? And even if they do, the discussion boards or the hashtag or whatever about it is likely to be dead, okay? So like it might exist, you know, there might be like a hashtag for a Lemmy board, but like it only has like, you know, like 7 posts within like 7 months. The appeal is pretty much dead for that person right there on the spot. And getting away from, you know, necessarily just like meeting people and such and actually interacting with people, well, we're going to be talking about the actual servers and instances themselves. Because all the different nodes have their own things going on in addition to the overall network, right? Occasionally, a controversy between two servers can lead to one defederating from the other. In other words, this means that the users, okay, like the entire user base of those two servers will be unable to interact because of something that an admin did. This often can be likened to a term that I'm just going to make, and I'm going to call it defederation drama. Now, sometimes, right, this is done with good reason, okay? For example, like, what have I written down here? Oh, yeah, with very controversial, hateful, or spammy and otherwise provocative instances causing havoc. However, often two servers just clash because of a difference in ideals with the admins, and they end up cutting off all of their entire user bases from each other. If you can't tell, this is quite a major issue because if you're blocking a massive instance, then you're taking away like a huge part of the activity for all of the users on your server, which means you're making their experience worse as a result. I'm not going to get into throwing around like the censorship or like the free speech words because there's just way too much political baggage with those nowadays. Sorry, y'all, I don't have like the time or the money to do all that right now. But I do find this a major issue with the underlying technology and something that just can make your experience a lot worse. It has made the experience a lot worse for many people who have used it. And a lot of people have stopped using the Fediverse because of this, at least from what I've seen. Is it a very common thing that happens? No, but it is something that does happen occasionally and is a risk if you join, let's say, well, not even a smaller instance, but maybe one that is relatively big, but is just more so ran by like some other entity that has a bit more of a care about, you know, what other servers are doing, I guess. I mean, besides from their own. I don't know. Hey, editor here. I also want to add to that point that a lot of servers tend to want to keep a certain culture. And to do that, that requires a lot of moderation and a lot of just more effort being put into maintaining certain conversations and making certain topics more prevalent, you know, keeping more high quality discussion, I guess. And it's probably like, it's a very large topic of its own that seems small, but I feel like I had to add this note in just to maybe add a bit more clarity. Appreciate it. I guess this would just like naturally sort itself out. I mean, few people want to be on an instance where they're going to be unable to see a large amount of activity after all. I could go on, but the point stands, okay? The Fediverse and its underlying technology, ActivityPub, have a lot of issues that need to be ironed out before it can become viable for a larger audience. And until these structural issues are fixed, or at least have some sort of remedy in place, they are just not going to be competitive with centralized social media, not nearly as much as they could be. All right, so it's time to like cut things off a bit now. You know, I've got to get ready to get going. I have like a bunch of homework I need to do. But look, I can't emphasize this enough. This isn't meant to be a negative video about Mastodon or the Fediverse. It's a great concept with many supporters. Trust me, I know. Like there's a lot of support for this, and a lot of people believe in it. I mean, heck, even Facebook. All right, when they made Threads, right, they implemented the technology ActivityPub into this and literally made Threads a part of the Fediverse. Now, the reason why you don't see them like talked about in the same sentences too much is because most of the Fediverse actually blocked Facebook for, I think, like, I mean, we're talking about Facebook here, all right? There's a lot of ethical issues going on there, so can you blame them? I don't know. You make that judgment. I encourage you to go check out something on this network, all right? Go check out Mastodon Social or something like that, and if it vibes with you, then join and contribute and help it grow into the thing that it needs to be. You'll probably have some fun there, but for me, the execution just is not there yet. Let me know your thoughts, and I guess I'll see you around.